Welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast, where we dive into the inspiring stories of go-to-market professionals who have leveraged their skills to create strong and lasting connections within their community. Get ready to be inspired and learn how you too can harness your business superpower for good.
In today's digital world, your headshots are your first impression. They're everywhere. It's on your LinkedIn, it's on your company website, your social media channels. So having a new up-to-date headshot is really important, but getting a new headshot is not so easy. This is why I used Secta Labs. You can upload pictures of yourself to Secta Labs on a Saturday, on the couch, in your pajamas, just like I did. And 2 hours later, you'll have about 200 professional quality headshots to choose from. That's why I decided to partner with Secta Labs. They make getting a new professional quality headshot as easy as click, upload, save. So click the link in the show notes below, check out their website, upload your photos, and enhance your professional image. And don't forget to tag me, Leslie Greenwood, and the People Powered Community Podcast when you post your new headshots on LinkedIn. And now let's jump into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Greenwood, founder and CEO of Chief Evangelist Consulting. We're here live with a new episode featuring the CEO and founder of Revenue Funnel. So let's welcome to the show, Hannah Ajikawo. So great to have you. So today we're going to talk at length about you, your superpower. And just so everyone knows, I ask every guest to list what their superpower is, because that's kind of in this people-powered part of this. We're going to kind of dive into what people's superpowers are and how they use it in their business and their life. But first, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us who you are, what you're doing. Before that, let me just jump back. It's, Hannah and I have, we'll put on quotes, known each other for a couple of years through both Pavilion and LinkedIn. I have followed her for a really long time. I love the content you put out. I love the realness of your content, and I love the way that you bring in both your family, your life, and how you put that together with your business content. And it just really resonates with me and how I think about the way I talk to people. And so I'm just really excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about you.
No, firstly, Leslie, thank you for reaching out to me. Thank you for inviting me on. I love the concept of the podcast. So hopefully I can bring value to yourself and also to listeners. So for context, Ajikawo is a Nigerian name. My dad's Nigerian, my mum's Jamaican, which always is a great conversation starter because two very powerful cultures coming together to create me, which is great. So I left school, did criminology and social policy. I really thought that I knew how to solve crime. That was my thing. I was like, I get it. I don't understand why this is so difficult. And then I realized the system will stop you from trying to create anything and create change. So I very quickly realized that's maybe not going to be the thing that allows me to be great. And sales found me at a career fair. I was at a career fair, needed money, and someone said, "Hey, do sales." I was like, "Don't know what that is, but you said I can just do certain things, and it means I can get paid for it. That seems pretty clear." So I did that, and that was 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So it's held me hostage ever since, but I absolutely love it. And I've gone through every single role that you can imagine, even ones that just get made up in startup environments. I think the way in which I think about sales and business in general comes from being in environments where I did really well, and environments where I did terribly. And I've looked at the constructs that help to create those spaces to see what creates success and what doesn't. And that's sort of how I start to bring together stories around the things that I share on like LinkedIn and in public forums. So today, I am the CEO and founder of Revenue Funnel. So I launched it this year. So dating it, it's early 2023. And I did that because the focus is I want to help you retain more revenue inside your funnel. I have two fundamental axioms. If you get very obsessed, almost annoyingly obsessed with customer centricity and driving value, and serve people where they are, you will in turn convert that into coins. And a lot of it's because people are getting what they need. The other axiom is if you really think about where you win and you go there more often, you will win more often. That's it. That's the two things that I'm focused on. And I fundamentally believe that it's just this thing that's been bubbling inside me for a few years. And I made sense of it through all of the consulting work I've done over the last 7 years. And I felt like I own that narrative and I have to do it inside my own space. So I'm holding myself completely accountable to challenging the way people think about doing business. So that's it.
Okay,
That's my intro.
two things struck me there. One is when you described how you you take the bits and you kind of investigate where you succeed, you investigate where you have failed, and you
Yeah.
put it together, which basically is you solving crimes.
There you go.
You're
See?
solving sales crimes.
Oh my God, this is it.
So you're seriously solving sales crimes. I
I am. And I love that you've given me that title because that's going to appear on LinkedIn
oh,
soon.
I can't wait because there are a lot of crimes in sales.
There are.
Um,
There are a lot, but not all of them are committed by salespeople, Leslie, and that's really the narrative that I started on when Clubhouse was like the hype.
mm,
I was running a room called "Stop Firing Salespeople," and the scenario that I used to put out there is if you went 2 quarters of not hitting target and you were not allowed to fire salespeople, what's the next thing you do? And it was attracting sales leaders into the room where they're like, okay, so I'd have to let me think about that. Like I couldn't sax because that's the easiest thing to do. And it's never the root cause. Very, very rarely is that the root cause of why a company has done bad over the course of half a year. It's usually other things, but we don't do that. We just get rid of salespeople, hopefully bring new people in. They'll create a new sales to market strategy, which is something I keep going on about. Like sales will figure it out if we just hire someone else that's been successful. So yeah, sales crimes, and yeah, that's it.
oh my goodness, that's amazing. And this isn't your first time being a founder.
It isn't. No, so I kickstarted. So 2019, I was in a role, just getting started, literally in my ramp period, and I kept getting more and more people ask for consulting on the side. So I was in a hybrid sort of AE type player coach. It's a startup, so you did everything right. They tell you one thing, and then they pay you for all the other. They don't pay you for all of the other things you do. However, what happened in that time is I was in a very different space of enlightenment about myself and the value that I could create. So I was very now how I am now. That's like the optimism, and that's just how I am all the time. But lots of people kept coming to me asking for consulting, and really quickly I was like, well, I did that on a plane. I mean, I did that in the train. I did that at home. This is really flexible. I can just do this anytime. So I was like, I'm not seeing my boy enough because I leave home and he doesn't see me for 13 hours of a day. This role's not going to work for me. And I couldn't get that flexibility in role. They said 1 day a week. I said, this is just not enough. I was getting paid more for consulting. And I was like, people listen to you. Oh my God, if you consult and someone says like, I have a problem and you tell them what to do, they listen. But when you work for the company, they don't. So that clicked. So I left and I started growth mode end of 2019 because I wanted flexibility and more money. And then COVID happened and I got flexibility and no money. And I was like, okay, okay, how does this work? But I had a choice then. I said, do I just keep going with this consulting thing or do I just go and get a job? So I looked at my bank account. I said, I have 6 months of runway. I've got to make it work. And then I just put out a video on LinkedIn and I found the first video I ever posted. And I'm going to post it again soon. It's in my phone somewhere. But that was like me being brave. And I said, I'm only going to get different results if I do different things. So I just did different things like Clubhouse and videos. All of these things I was not comfortable with. People see me now and they're like, oh my God, Hannah. I'm like, people that knew me 10 years ago would say, Hannah didn't really speak that much. She just kind of was under the radar. So very different to what I used to be.
Well, feel free to share that. If you want to share that clip and you want me to put it in the show notes, just so everyone can see like
Yes.
4 years ago, quiet Hannah, like let's do it and see, because I'm kind of been on a similar journey. I mean, I've always talked a lot. My husband and I both work from home at some point. He's like, what do you do all day? Do you seriously just talk on the phone all day? I'm like, yeah, it's the best thing ever. And of course, he's in finance. So all he does is, I'm like, do you really just stare at spreadsheets all day? Like, yuck. So yeah, stepping out of the comfort zone and doing new things. I mean, this podcast, I'm like, I was afraid to do podcasts, let alone host a podcast. So I can certainly appreciate that. Well, that is awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your superpower. So you gave me a superpower on your intake form. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that, about where you think that came from and, how you use that in both your day-to-day business and maybe, this is the community powered podcast. Tell me a little bit of how you
Yeah.
might use that within how you work and think about community.
Yeah, and so let's go back to when you were so first things first, my superpower is I make people smile. And if we take it back a step, I think and I think about those constructs, right? Successful, not successful. And I'm always the most successful in spaces where I can be myself. And it took me a long time to firstly recognize, like, who is Hannah? What am I about? I was very much a go along with whatever was going on at the moment with the person I was in, either in a relationship or whatever's happening with my family. And I kind of just did that. But at the time, I was always the mediator, the person that people would come to for advice. And I was like no war, only peace. Everything is great in the world. That's like my natural character, right? And then I was like, well, I just tend to make people smile. And I genuinely feel like I'm funny and nobody else does. And that makes me laugh, right? Everyone's like, Hannah, you're genuinely not that funny. I'm like, I genuinely think I am. So I noticed in the interactions I was having where everybody would be in spaces and it was very much like, I am the salesperson, you are the buyer. When one of my sales managers, one of them were on the road and he was like, Hannah, he was like, did you notice something in that meeting? And I was like, yeah, they have their business is a mess. And he was like, forget that. He's like, what else did you notice? He's like, I described everything in intricate detail and they paid me no attention. He's like, they really trusted what you said. They trusted you because you were just keeping it real. And I was like, but that's normal to me. So I realized that when you connect on a human level and you make people smile, everybody likes to smile, not with jokes, but just by being human and bringing them into my environment where if I am a salesperson and I book that sales meeting, I'm like, this is your time out. Like, I don't want you to feel like this is another meeting. This should be your chill time. And immediately they relax and they're like, oh, okay, Hannah's different. So I feel like that's my superpower because it allows me to connect and therefore extract more because people trust me quite quickly. And then I deliver on that. I'm congruent with that from talking to action. So I think that's definitely my superpower. And I lean into it as much as I can.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of came from like being the family mediator is where that comes from. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I'm going to grab a book real quick because you probably read it, but this is on my reading list, The Courage to be Disliked.
No, I haven't, but I've seen it pop up on LinkedIn. Someone's recommended it.
Yeah, so I'm going to that's one of the next books on my list once I get done reading Everybody Writes so I can become a better writer and read more about community. So, and then throw in some beachy trash novels for fun. So,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, you have to do that. You absolutely have to do that. I know. How, as you think about, like, I mean, obviously I've run into, that's how I met you, is through community. And then, mostly interact with you through community. Like, how do you think that benefits you as you think and work through community? Because I think that you're a person similar to me that feels like community is a very important part of like your person, and not just your business person, but your personal person, especially based on our conversation before this. So how does that superpower kind of go into that?
Yeah, so as you know, I head up the European region for Sisters in Sales, and I joined that community. I just came knocking at Chantel George's door and said, I have never experienced this before. This is quite emotional for me right now. I've never worked with another woman of color, and how do I change that in Europe? It's really bad. And she said, okay, like, come join a team, and that was 2.5 years ago. So what I do is I lean into me in a community, and because a lot of people are still a little bit like, can I do that? Can I say that? Is that okay? And I'm like, I don't care anymore. So I have the courage to be disliked. I have the courage to also be liked by being myself. And I think there's two sides to that. You can be like, I don't care what anyone says, whether it's good or bad, right? You just are. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. So what I did in some of those spaces, in the pavilions, in the Rev Geniuses, is I just showed up as myself and brought myself to the table through content, through video. And because nobody knew me, I didn't come with like this roster of lots of people that I knew because I didn't network before. I honestly was I kept my head down, I got on with it, and I immersed myself in me and my own headspace. And as I had to break out of that, I was like, I don't know anyone. I know the people I've worked with. Not all of them have been my kind of people. I need new spaces. So I kicked down a door by saying, this is who I am, this is who I am, this is who I am. And if you like it, you're gonna gravitate towards me. And if you don't like it, you're probably still gonna be nosy and can gravitate towards me. So that's how it's helped me in community spaces. And an example of how this works for me really well is just over 2 years ago, somebody who's really senior in the community spaces, and he's an investor in some, he said to me, let's meet. I keep seeing your face everywhere and I've heard your name a few times. And I was like, okay. I looked at his profile. I was like, oh, you are actually my old boss's boss and you're pretty senior because you're an investor, and all the dots connected. But we met, and then a week after meeting, this is on Zoom, a week after meeting, he said, somebody's just come to me and they want someone to help them with sales training. He said, I don't really do that, but I'm going to refer you, not recommend you, because I don't know if you're any good, but I will refer you.
Good point.
And until this day, I still work with that company. So it's like, when you talk about the benefit and power of community and being yourself, I shared my passions, what excites me, what ignites me, what the value I bring. And he remembered that. At all the meetings he does with his investment portfolio and his family and his training and his own business, he was like, I remembered Hannah, and she can provide this, and I'm going to put my brand in front of her to refer her. And it worked out well. And I met that individual for the first time this week.
Oh, in person?
Yeah, in person.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was full circle. I was like, hug time. So as we were talking about, right, it's hug season. But yeah, it's really powerful when you can lean into that. And I don't think I can be anybody else but me, which is lots of energy often.
Yes. I think that's amazing, because you're the person, like if I were to duplicate someone, because I always find there's certain people in communities that I'm in, I'm like, ooh, I just want to like clone them and put them in 17,000 places so that they'll just be the ideal community member for me. And like, you're the one that would go in there and, like if it's going back to parenting, like you want to model the behavior that you want to see. And so you're the one in there modeling that, you know what, I don't know this question. I'm okay that I don't know this question, and I need help, because that's where I feel like some people, they moderate themselves so much that they lose out on the benefit of community because they're too worried about showing that they don't know. And when you're true and authentic in a community and show that vulnerability that you don't know, and maybe it's not even a vulnerability. Honestly, I think it's a strength that you say that you don't know, or that you're having a challenge or a struggle, then that shows the other people how they can interact. That's how you take that, like, take yourself from networking into community, is by creating those kind of connections. And if you're only just like, I know all the things, like, you can't make those connections. And I think that's something that, like, when I think of, now that we've talked and I think about your superpower, like, that's a little bit, it goes into your make people smile, but it's because you've created this authentic place, relaxed place, open, vulnerable place where they can be themselves. And then that allows you to shine because you're exceptionally, good at that particular skill.
Yeah. It's like I take that. My brand means a lot to me, so I really, I take that really seriously. I will move away from spaces where I feel like it's going to jeopardize my brand, because I feel like there are people who know me, have worked with me, support me, follow me, who are like, if Hannah says she's going to do something, I feel like she's someone that delivers. I feel like she has a good value system, that whether I agree with everything she says or not, she's a good person. And I feel like if there's ever situations where that is taken away from me, I remove myself from that space. So I really, really take it seriously when I do have sales leaders come to me and say, I don't know what to do here. This person's pushing down on me and putting pressure. The team are a mess. They don't trust me. And I'm like, well, can I keep it real? You're not showing up. Like, this is what I'm hearing. I will never pinpoint what salespeople tell me, because I think that jeopardizes that relationship. But I'll say to the sales leader, they don't think that you're showing up for them. And because of that vulnerability, progress comes. right? You know, I coach some sales leaders and they come out and they like, Hannah, I did exactly what we uncovered in the coaching session. I did exactly that. Oh my gosh, mind blown. I've seen a difference immediately. And I'm like, you did that.
Yep.
Right? You did that. But you were trusting and vulnerable enough to share that with me. And that's part of my superpower, to your
Yeah.
point. I've created that space
Yep.
in making them smile too.
Do you think about, because someone's asked me, I mean, I think one of my skills is creating rapport with people. I'm able to get to rapport, get to connection very quickly within a conversation, and it feels natural. I mean, that's just something I do, but I haven't thought about, I haven't written down, like, how does that happen? Like, there are things that I do. I know I notice backgrounds. I remember that you have a young son, like there's things that my brain just remembers that helps me get there. But like, have you ever thought about like writing a process? Like, how could you teach someone your superpower? That's always been, it's a little bit of a challenge because it's innate for me. So I don't know if you have the same problem.
No, it's firstly, I admire people who remember lots of things like that. I have this awful thing that my brain does where it's just like, "Pff, don't need that for the minute. Focus in on this thing. And then I'll try and grab that information and I'll remember tiny bits of it. But I'll remember the bigger story. Like, Leslie went away. I don't know if it was on a cruise ship or
Yes.
something very recently. We had a family photo, right? So I'll pick up some things, but I'm like, there was a daughter and a son and a husband, I think. I remember some pieces, but the names, don't ever tell me your name. I will never remember it. But like extracting that superpower to somebody else, and it's funny because I made a post about this, I think the other day on TikTok, around rapport, and it was like, rapport is really just creating a safe space for someone to share, having a two-way dialogue. And that's, sometimes we overthink it, and I used to overthink it because I'm like, I don't remember anything. And then what would happen is I'm like, I'm forcing myself to talk about topics that I don't really care about, and I don't want to do that because that's inauthentic. However, if I lean into me and make them relax, right? If I help them to disarm them by being like, hey, what's made you smile? How do you feel today? What's good? And I genuinely care. That's enough. That's rapport built. And then hopefully they say things and it makes it easier for me to remember stuff because actually I genuinely cared about what I was saying. But asking about football teams and stuff, I'll be like, I'm not going to remember that.
No.
So
That's a great tip. I'm going to use that too, because I do forget the little details, which is why I have a recorder on every meeting. But that you're right. Once you get them relaxed and they're talking, you're like, oh, yeah. I remember that we talked about that. And you're like, oh, I had no idea I don't remember that at all.
yeah,
But now I do.
exactly, right?
Awesome.
So yeah, just think about disarming people.
That's crazy. I know that you are in a couple of communities. Have you ever thought about building your own community before?
Oh yeah. And it's something that came as I think about. Somebody said to me when I had my post on LinkedIn, "Hey, congratulations on the new job." Obviously, it's auto type, so you just click yes. So someone sent that to me in Messenger or inbox, and I was like, "This isn't a new job for me; it's a movement." And the reason why I say that is because I am trying to change sales. This isn't a job where I'm like, I'm going to go in and do a little bit of consulting and do wiggle wiggle over there and wiggle wiggle over there. I genuinely want us to rethink how we do everything when it comes to B2B sales. So I'm looking for people that are doing what seems to feel impossible. So the first thing on my website, when you go on there, is like, what if you could close 100 of the qualified opportunities that came into your business? And the next thing is, it feels uncomfortable thinking about that, right? It does, because it seems so like that's ridiculous. Why is it ridiculous? And I always think about this. There's so many stories, right? Like the first person to break the 4-minute mile, the first person to climb, Everest, the first person to go on there's always a first. Why do we not aim for that? Why do we always aim for average and ordinary? So I'm constantly trying to find people that have these divergent ways of thinking, that look to do impossible things, and that's what my community would be.
Okay.
It will come sooner or later, but that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in sales as well.
Right.
Sales is not the be all and end all. We naturally sell more than we think, even if we're not in sales. So yeah, that's kind of where my head's at with that.
I love that. And one of the things, as like the very first thing that I talk about with potential customers, is that, we have to find out what the sticky glue is. You teaching people sales is not the sticky glue. There are 8,000 people that claim to be able to teach people how to do sales. Your sticky glue has to be something different, a larger vision, a larger picture. And that's where, when I talk to companies, or if I were to be like, spot consulting you is like, what are your mission, vision, values? How do we bring that into the community and use those to build the community through those? Because those are the things that make connections that would make your community sticky. And so that really resonates, because what you're talking about is like, it's the bigger vision, it's the broader picture, it's an ideal, it's a movement, it's a change movement. And that's how you would get people to come in and be excited and motivated to spend their very valuable time in, another community.
Exactly that. And that's the thing. And I have this feeling, again, it's probably going to be a LinkedIn post soon, but I feel like we're going to start to get out of this cruising zone where we fall in line. And we're going to see a pattern of people like, I'm not going to subscribe to that. They're going to start cutting out subscriptions because we've got all these things on autopilot. I auto sign up to all these things and everything. And it's so noisy. So people are going to start to get focused, get clarity, remove stuff, and they're going to find their movement. They're going to be like, this is what I'm about. Okay, so like, I'm not a Hulu, I'm a Netflix. I don't need Amazon Prime. I don't need things to come in 1 hour. What the hell's it's going to take a few years, but we're going to find the things that make sense to us. At the moment, we've taken on everything, and we're going to start filtering out.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
I think that's true in like creating smaller, more niche communities. The novelty of a community itself has worn off. That's why you really have to double down on what that mission, vision, values are. And I think you'll see those smaller communities come up, et cetera. So if I were to take away one aspect of your superpower, what advice would you give someone listening today who feels that, they have that similar superpower, they want to build on it and use it more efficiently in their life, in their business?
Oh, I would say every time that something feels impossible, lean into it. That would be the biggest thing because where I am at now, in even knowing you, I promise you, this was never on my radar 5 years ago. This wasn't even on my just at all. It just randomly meeting people, connecting with people. Like, not being detached from the outcome, just like, I know that I've got positive intentions here. I'm just going to lean into that. If they respond, that is a bonus. If not, no problem. Go ahead with your day. Be great. But I genuinely believe that I want to be the change that people, that I want to see in the world. And I can only do that if I keep doing it. So I'd encourage the person, you feel that something feels ridiculous and impossible. Perfect. Go do it.
Yeah, it's a sign. It's a sign that that's something, to look at. So that's awesome. Well, Hannah, this has been such a really great episode. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time just with you. I appreciate you taking the time to share your story, your superpower to me and our listeners. So obviously I know we can find you on LinkedIn, and I'll put the link in the show notes, of course, but where else should they go to learn about you?
I would, so as I invest more and more time, definitely YouTube. I did a lot of content like 2 years ago, and then I slowed down because guess what? You get really busy and I didn't make the time. So YouTube, just Hannah Ajikawo. And I'd say if you go on my LinkedIn and click on some of the URLs, it will take you to some free training, which is like a 30-minute dive into how I think about delivering customer value and how sales teams and revenue teams can start to do that. So it's free training. It's just a landing page, but it will take you to the information you need and go be great. Yeah.
I actually clicked on that before that. I'm like, ooh, I want to hear about free training. And so it's right underneath her LinkedIn profile, folks. I just clicked it. So it is great. Well, awesome. Hannah, it's been so great talking. And we'll talk again soon.
All right.